All right. So today we're going to talk turbo. Wow, it's incredible, right? So if we're going to have 5 ways of boosting your engine, and we've done 4, then I think we have 1 left. So let's do that one. 5 ways of boosting your engine. We have talked about. Now the list is long. I can't fucking remember all. So I think we started off with sequential. And then we did single turbo, and after single turbo we did compound, and then we did VNT, variable nozzle technology, and number 5 is fucking twin charge. What do you think? How many fucking ways can we boost an engine? So twin charge, that is fun. So this is like 2 1 2 1 2. So it's more or less 8 ways of boosting your engine, if we break it down. So 5 ways of boosting your engine, episode 5. And in episode 5 we're going to talk about twin charge. Twin charge is when you are combining different ways of boost. So the example that we're going to use, I don't know if there's any other ways to do this, but for me twin charge is this, because this is the efficient way to do it. Supercharger and turbo. So, and as usual I got 6 million messages, so yeah. The beauty with twin charge, this is the holy grail. If you're doing sequential, you have to have levers and stuff, and it's quite complicated, and you can't really have an efficient exhaust manifold. You can make it work, and it will work good, no question about it. But is it like the epitome of efficiency? Not really. Compound, really good, right? A little bit easier to set up. You just blowing boost through another turbo and so on. Yeah, but you're relying on that small one. And we call the small one for high pressure turbo. I mean, shouldn't the big one be the high pressure? No, that's the low pressure. So you have trade-offs. With twin charge, you don't really have that. You can build your super fancy tubular manifold. You can have your big ass turbo that will not restrict your engine in any way. And then you put a supercharger that will kick all this off. And these two are not connected. Oh, they can be connected, but yeah. You know what I mean? It's not like one turbo and another turbo. This is a turbo on a manifold, and then we have a supercharger. So it's 2 things, hence the name twin charge. And that means that you can have as high efficiency as your hardware allows you to. And that is very, very good. And how do you set it up? Yeah, there are 2 common ways to set this up. One is that you have a big ass diverter valve, and in this diverter valve is a flap, and this flap moves more or less freely, so it will just have the hole in it. My English is too poor for this actually. So it's 2 fucking tubes that goes into one tube, and there's a flap, and it just opens the tube that has the most airflow. So it's a very easy flap construction. And then you boost your supercharger through your turbo, because your turbo is already connected with boost pipes through an intercooler and to the inlet. So this is one way of doing it, blowing through your turbo. And when the turbo starts spooling, that will deliver so much more air equals suck so much more air than the supercharger can provide. So the flap will just move automatically and open down the tube of free airflow. So it's a very good, easy setup that I don't like. But you know, I always have to be the guy that does it the other way. So I like to do it like you have a single turbo setup. You have a big ass single turbo, and that has a charge pipe to an intercooler, and the intercooler goes to the intake, and there's nothing in between. But on your intake you have a similar diverter valve, and your supercharger is boosting straight up to intake and not through your turbo. This diverter valve has to be sealed in a whole other way, because otherwise you will have a ginormous boost leak. So it has to seal both ways. When the supercharger is pushing, it has to seal off the turbo side. Otherwise your supercharger will not provide any air to your engine. And when the turbo hits boost, the diverter flap will move over and seal the other direction. So it's a little bit more fancy of a setup, but when you have this sorted, you have no other things to think about. You just put your air filter on your turbo like you always do. You can pop the hood and you have a big single turbo setup. It's clean and it's efficient. I like that. So these are the two ways to do it: boost through your turbo, or just boost directly through your inlet. And both ways work good. One is a little bit more complicated, but the other one has a little bit of trade-offs. So it's always like that. You have to figure out for yourself, what do I want to do? Do I want to do like this, or I want to do like this? And then you do that. And the important thing is that you just think it through. What is the best way to do it? How can I do it? Can I manufacture parts? Can I buy parts? Can I invent fucking parts? Can I ask my neighbor for parts? Does this from my kitchen fucking cooker work? And then you sort it out. That's how we do it. That's building a car. And what do we have for enormous benefits? I made a video about this where I actually drew a graph, and this graph was of course linear because I was drawing it with a ruler. So it's not an actual engine, because a torque or a power curve of an engine is not linear. It moves accordingly to tons of parameters. But on my graph you could see in a very easy manner what happens. And if you boost as little as half a bar, 7 psi, your engine will be a completely different animal. And the turbo you have, the big ass single turbo, will now be a much smaller, more responsive turbo. If you can boost 1 bar, your engine is essentially double in size. So your 3 liter ohm 606 straight 6 diesel is now a 6 liter V12. So you can have a pretty big ass efficient turbo on top of that, and it will spool and be responsive. And that's what we're lacking. We're lacking the boost response. Lag and boost response is 2 different things. I promised you before to make a video about this, but I think you're just too stupid to understand that. No, I'm just kidding with you. I'm gonna do a video sometime when I have the time, but it's the essential is that if you are at a standstill and you roll away with your car, and when you're hitting your fucking 10-15 miles per hour or something, you're like, oh, I'm gonna put my foot down, and it happens nothing. That's lag. And then you're driving 60, 70, 80 miles per hour on the highway, and you see in the rear view mirror that there's a Corvette coming, and you do the same. That's boost response. Because boost response, if you have a turbo that is really, really efficient and modern, you might still have lag. But when you are cruising at your 60, 70, 80 miles per hour, the boost response is a totally different thing. Also, letting off and getting on it again is also boost response. So yeah, I do a video about that someday, but this will give you what your OM 601, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 don't have today. They don't have this feeling of power. They only have that when you hit boost. And if you can add just half a kilo of that, you can just try that. If you have an automatic super turbo, you can go out and you can put that in drive, right? And you push your brake fully fucking down to the floor, and you step on your throttle, and then you watch your boost gauge, and when that hits 7 psi, you let your foot go. 7 psi, oh, it's very little. No, 7 psi gets shit going. So even if you boost little on your supercharger, you will transform how the engine is, the feeling of the engine and the response of the engine. If you can boost more, happy days. So that's a little bit about twin charge. Blow your supercharger through the turbo or directly to your intake. I of course recommend you to have a small water to air intercooler between your supercharger and your intake if you're running that way. That's something that people that run big power compound actually have intercoolers or water cooled intercoolers between the stages, but that's for another video maybe. So stay safe out there and happy boosting, right? Bye.